Now that we've gone through how to prevent yourself from developing low back pain by having good form during your deadlift setup, we're going to talk a little bit about how to manage if you have any like tweaks or aches or small pains in your lower back. This is not medical advice. If you feel like you're having pain that you need to be addressed by a medical provider, you should seek out help from either a doctor of physical therapy, orthopedist, or your primary care physician. So, what we're going to do is just talk about how to manage small aches and pains and what I would do if I were to have a small little tweak in my back from something I did lifting. So, if I have a little bit of achiness in that lower back, what I want to do is make sure I'm continuing to move. A lot of people will uh, stop moving completely. They really protect their back and they try not to turn. You'll see them walking around like this, barely bending over to pick things up. If you're in that much pain, you should probably be getting help from someone. But what you want to do is you want to move within whatever available pain free window that you have. So if you have pain with rounding your spine, there's going to be a little bit of rounding that you'll be able to do before that pain starts. During some of these exercises, you're going to go through as much of that range of motion as you can without that pain onsetting. If we stick to that pain-free window, so as long as I'm in this box and all of the movement in that box is pain-free, and I move to the edges and back, then over time that will expand throughout each day that I'm working on these types of exercises, and your pain-free window will allow you to get through your full range of motion eventually. Whereas if you stiffen things up, that pain-free window will shrink, or if you push too hard and you push directly into that pain, bending forward constantly if that's something that bothers you, or doing a stretch that's just causing sharp pain, then that pain free window is going to shrink. You're only going to be able to move this much before that pain onsets. And then you're kind of resetting your timeline. Pain control exercise here is going to be a cat cow, but it's different most likely than how you've done a cat cow in the past. So most people doing cat cows look like this, where they're just moving in and out of that position in whatever way they want. So what we're going to do to make sure that that's not causing you pain is we're going to think about your spine as segments in a chain, and we're going to try to move segment by segment one at a time. So starting with my tailbone, I am going to point my tailbone up towards the ceiling, and then I'm moving that segment above, and I'm going through my entire lower back. Then my mid back starts to move, and then my shoulder blades pinch together, and then my head looks up. From there, I'm going to do the opposite. My head comes down. Notice how my low back doesn't move at all yet. I'm just moving my upper back, unpinching my shoulder blades, and then my mid back is starting to move, and then I'm starting to move that lower back, and then at the very end, tucking that tailbone. So I'm going segment by segment, moving very slowly and intentionally, and that really frees up that movement from that pain. And again, if you have pain when you're doing some of these movements, you don't want to be pushing into that. So say as I get into this position, I have pain there, but I can go this far without pain. That's as far as I'm going to go. And I'm going to retry again, the next day or after a few more reps. And then eventually you'll be able to get through that full motion. I'm bending side to side. Again, we're going to think about your spine as segments in a chain, and we're just going to move one segment at a time. So on your hands and knees, we're going to get your spine in a straight position. We're going to think about pinching your hip towards your rib. And then as I do that, I'm going to work my way up. Then I'm going to start getting my shoulder in and then my head, and eventually look over at my heel. Now, if you're doing this and it's causing some pinchiness, you might be arching your back too much as you're doing it. So you want to make sure you're kind of in a neutral position or even a slightly rounded position. You can play with what portion of that cat cow that you're in. I like to make sure you're kind of neutral though, and you're not here and you're not here. So you want to be somewhere in the middle, and then you're going to go through that side bending exercise. You should feel a nice strong stretch on that left side as I do this. Hold it for 5 seconds. And then we're going to go back to the other side. I'm going to pinch my left rib to my left hip and look over my shoulder. Feel a nice strong stretch over here. hold for 5 seconds, and then I'm just going to repeat side to side. I'm not throwing my hips to the side. I'm kind of moving one segment at a time as I bend. Going to bend your knees up while laying down. You're going to keep your back flat on the ground. We're going to keep your feet and knees together and just slowly let your legs fall towards the side. And I'm moving again, segment by segment in my spine until I feel a stretch on this opposite side. Once I feel a comfortable stretch that's not painful, we're just going to hold it there for a second or two. If you feel good, you can keep going. But if you go too far and it starts to hurt, then we're going to back up and we're not going to go back into that painful zone again. Then we're going to come back to the other side and do the same thing. You might find one side you can go further than the other. If you can, that's great. Let yourself go fully to that side if it's not painful. And we're just going to rock back and forth in a slow segmental motion like this. If that trunk rotation felt good but didn't feel like it quite gave you enough stretch, we're going to move on to this next one. If that one had any pain, don't do this exercise. So what you're going to do is straighten one leg, take the top leg, reach over until you feel a nice strong stretch in your lower back. You might even get a little bit of a crack with this one. You can play with how high your knee is. The higher it is, the higher up the stretch you'll feel and the more stretch you'll get in your hip. The lower it is, the lower stretch you'll feel in your lower back. And then we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. Again, you shouldn't be going this far if you're having any pain, and you shouldn't be pushing through it.